Welcome to Caribbean Straight Talk with real conversations and great interviews.
This is Professor GT inviting you to join Lima Dunbar along with DJs Code Red and Kevorkian on the People's Chat Room every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on iTunesRadio.com.
Hi, this is Lima Dunbar for Caribbean Street Talk, where we bring real conversations, real keyword, every time we step on this platform. Our host, Mr. George Boussoul, is still on location. And again, tonight we have another interesting conversation. And this man is a friend of the People Chat Room. He's a friend of Caribbean people, Black people, people on the whole. Dr. Lynn Rollin, virologist, microbiologist. Dr. Rollin, welcome to Caribbean Street Talk.
Well, hey, thank you for that warm introduction, and I look forward to presenting your people and the people of the Caribbean great information so they can survive and navigate through this endemic infection that we have in this new world of ours.
Thank you. So before we have our conversation with Dr. Rollin, I want to read some highlights from his CV. It's very extensive, so I'm going to have to kind of pick and choose. But he is a highly trained and professional educator, distinguished and notable medical doctor with over 30 years of experience in environmental and biosafety protections and protocols. He is very passionate. And if you have ever seen him and heard him, you'll know that he is very passionate about his role as an infectious disease specialist. He is a licensed and board certified doctor with extensive experience in clinical and hospital settings. Dr. Rollins, MD, Dr. Rollin, MD's orthopedic contextual specialties include foot, ankle, and limb salvage. And a lot of that I know he does in the jungles of Peru and Honduras. We'll talk a little bit about that within our conversation today. And let's see some of his letters. He's got a medical doctoral degree from the University of Health Sciences, Antigua, Doctor of Podiatric Medicine degree from the California College of Podiatric Medicine and Surgery. He's got, I think, two masters, or is it two doctoral degrees, a Master's of Science degree in Cellular and Molecular Biology from the University of Nevada, Reno School of Med, undergraduate degree in microbiology and chemistry with a minor in military sciences from Weber State University. There's a whole lot on here, a whole lot. He's also an ex-military man. Okay. He also, and I know he's done something, or he's got experience in biochemical. I don't want to jack it up, Dr. R. Biochemical, and you can speak for yourself when we start to have that conversation, because I know I won't jack it up. So here we go. Why take your expertise as an infectious disease expert to Peru and not here in the United States?
Well, I had the opportunity to provide healthcare all over the world, and I had an opportunity back in 2004 to go to Peru on a military medical mission. I went down there and I just fell in love with it. And I felt the most important thing is that I had the opportunity to meet the people and do some significant surgery. On one of my particular surgery cases, I operated on this baby that had a congenital defect. It took me about 5 hours to do the case. The case was on television, etc. And I ended up fixing this individual baby, and it just struck my heart that Peru needed they needed somebody with my expertise and stuff. And so I had the opportunity to meet the president of the country at that time. And I gave Peru 15 years of my life of trying to provide humanitarian work in the jungles of Peru on some of the most significant patients with diseases that will blow your mind away. And so that's how Peru ended up being part of my life, a road that I didn't know was going to occur, but I was ready for it. And so my opportunity to provide healthcare to the poor, uh, I've done it. And it was a hell of a mission to be able to do that.
Now I know you still have a program down there at in as Tapita
Yeah.
is based in Peru.
Yes, Tepeda NGO is an organization I started back in 2002 called Tropical Pathology and Infectious Disease Association. Tepeda's mission is to provide humanitarian care to most people in effective hot zones in the world, from Africa to South America, providing health care, providing medication, providing free surgeries, free hospice care for some patients and stuff. And it's an educational program to introduce students around the world to the world of infectious diseases because 90% of the people in the world live between the tropical of Cancer and tropical of Capricorn, which is the equator, the Caribbean, Peru, malaria, dengue zones, Africa, etc. And that's where most people are affected at. And so that's part of Tepeda's worldwide mission is to educate students in basic and advanced tropical medicine diseases and come up with new drugs to try to prevent some of these diseases in the future.
We're going to talk a little bit about that later on, but thank you for that, sir. You are one of the few that are certified in chemical and biological warfare in the United States. And everything else on your CV says that you have had to be 10 times better than your white counterpart. Please tell us about your journey.
Well, I mean, the reality is that that's what it is. It's the what we call the American history, even called the Caribbean history. I was 6 years old and I had a white teacher tell me I was retarded. And at that time, I wanted to be an astronaut, a heart surgeon, or a fighter pilot. And you don't know what's going to happen in life as a kid, dreaming, a little black boy from the country, Louisiana, catching tadpoles and bullfrogs and catching all types of different critters, like we say in the South. But I had that dream at that age, and that kind of motivated me because as I grew up, I had the opportunity to deal with other racial experiences. In particular, I had a teacher in high school asked me what did I want to be when I grow up. I said I want to be a doctor, and he said I didn't have the aptitude. What 16-year-old black kid boy knows what the word aptitude means? And then later in life, when I was in my last year undergraduate, as the first black to receive a microbiology degree and a military scholarship at Weaver State University, I asked one of my professors, Dr. Horn, for a letter of recommendation. And sure enough, she said she wrote me a nice letter of recommendation. And sure enough, most people don't realize when you get to that level, you have access to your record. So I ended up having the opportunity to read what she wrote. And she wrote on there that I didn't have the capabilities and skills to do graduate level work. And then 10 years later, I provided a scholarship to the school. And she came up in my face and told me I knew you were going to make it. And so these events have always made me strive to be 10 times better. I cannot be average in life. Michael Jordan couldn't be average. Tiger Woods could not be average. Michael Vick couldn't be average. We don't get to sit on the bench and develop for 20 years. We have to play now. And so one thing I got tired of people telling me was about that you weren't smart enough, you weren't educated enough. So guess what? I went and got all the degrees. That's why I have 6 degrees. So anybody want to talk to me about education, they're talking to the wrong individual.
And then have the hypocrisy to see in a room and say, I knew you could do it all along. Damn, these
Oh,
people.
I looked at her and I wanted to tell her what I really thought, but I played along with the game. And so my responsibilities, I made her famous. Dr. Horn's her name, just like nobody knows who's the coach that cut Michael Jordan in high school. Everybody's been trying to search this guy's name out because that guy was a complete idiot who cut Michael Jordan in high school.
It makes you laugh. I mean, okay, why do blacks and people of color have a lifespan of 8 to 10 years less than whites?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. In particular, it's just the one is the environment itself. The environment from a stressful situation, from dealing with racial discrimination, that's a reality for all our people for the last 200 years. So you can imagine the stress that been put on us individual African Americans. That becomes a genetic component of having high blood pressure and all the different diseases. But the reality at the end of the day, the environmental stress, the lack of basic health care, the second class citizenry in medicine has played into the contribution of why African Americans and people in the Caribbean islands have such bad health care. That's just the reality. At one time, you have to realize just 40 years ago, we were considered animals. We had to go in the back of hospitals. You didn't know if your great great grandmother got medication or she got a placebo. I know a lot of Black folks in Louisiana, in particular, my grandmother had high blood pressure. And my mother, who's a nurse, didn't now thinks that she really probably didn't get her high blood medication. So the society treats us like animal. That is one part of it. The systemic racism is another part of it. And then just the fact of just thinking us Black folks are just human beings. And that's proven by the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where they gave Black men syphilis and they studied them for 40 years. And babies came out with congenital syphilis, missing eyeballs, brains, legs, neurosyphilis of the brain, decrease in mortality rate. So that is a very good example of what a society can do to a particular race, and that is the reality. So we've never gotten the best health care. We always were second class. We were always treated as second class, and that's the reality. And this is what we face today.
That just reminds me of a theory that has been brought to the forefront, a critical race theory, because a lot of what you just said there is part of critical race theory. Now, I have my opinion on it, and that opinion is pretty much that the lady who brought critical race theory to the forefront did not defend her theory the way she should have. So they took it and they ran with it. But the essence of what CRT is exactly what you just said there. My thoughts.
Well, that's just the reality. And so, at the end of the day, we have to have a real conversation. And we've never had that real conversation. We look at the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, nobody's really had that conversation. The reality is people have kind of just brushed it off like it wasn't no big deal, but it is a big deal. And this plays into why African Americans or people of color are very hesitant on the vaccine itself. That plays into the medicine hesitancy because the system has not treated Black folks thoroughly, period. End story.
Got a lot of questions on that, but we'll come to that on the other side of this break. We're going to take a short pause for a cause, and we will return on the other side with Dr. Lane Rolling.
This is Professor GT inviting you to join Lima Dunbar along with DJs Code Red and Kevorkian on the People's Chat Room every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on iTunesRadio.com.
Val Branch Duncan, realtor with North Star First Properties. Her name says it all, where V stands for valuable, A, attentive, L for loyal. If you are buying or selling properties in the Caribbean and North America, Val can help. She is specialized to assist you in Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Barbados, Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago. Give Val a call at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622. Val Branch Duncan, realtor with North Star First Properties. Please give her a call again at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622.
iTunes Entertainment Magazine, where the focus is to bring information and entertainment wrapped in a little something extra that is pertinent and relative to all of us, regardless of culture. Our features aim at catering somewhat to the curiosity in all of us, whether it be business, entertainment, health and wellness, immigration, our youth, and more. So please visit our website at www.itunesentertainmentmagazine.com or itunesentmagazine.com. Also inviting you to check us out on IG and Twitter at itunesentmag.
And we are back. And I am grinning from ear to ear. You may wonder why. I'll tell you why. This right here is one of my favorite guests from all time. I mean, and I don't say that lightly. Dr. Lane Rollin. Up to now, it's a wonder he hasn't asked me if I had any, if I made any rice and peas, but I'm sure he's going to get to that somewhere along the line somewhere here. However, I don't want to start him up just yet. So let's get back to some serious conversation. In a September 2021 article, you forecasted that we would surpass the 1.1 million COVID 19 deaths by the new year. And that was 2022. So now we're in 2023. So one wonders, right? You had also shared with us on the PCR that we cannot vaccinate our way out of this. What would you suggest, seeing that there are over 4,000 different strains of coronavirus? And back then you stated we only knew about 12 or 13.
Well, the reality is that if the individuals that are listening to this our talk tonight need to understand that the coronavirus is an RNA virus. It's one of the most immunogenic viruses on the planet. It mutates all the time. And there's a lot more. There are thousands of different coronaviruses out there. And this is the problem that we've had from day one. Even before we had the vaccine, I told everybody that come with a vaccine, it's almost impossible that's going to eradicate this virus because there's so many different mutations. And so at the end of the day, you never do a vaccine platform in the middle of a pandemic, because what happens is you create super mutants. And this is what we're seeing now. A lot of you folks out there drunk the Kool-Aid and you're still getting reinfected over and over and over and over again. And the reality is that this is the creation of what we created as man by doing a vaccination program in the middle of a pandemic. A good example of that is that when you look at what happened in the Philippines have a disease called dengue endemic. They tried to come up with a vaccine for dengue. They went there and they tried to vaccinate people in the Philippines and had tremendous amounts of deaths from a phenomenon called antibody dependent enhancement, which means that if you inject somebody that's already infected with the virus, you create super autoantibodies that attack your cells. It can end up killing you. And this is what we're having right now. We have a lot of the complications that we see with this vaccine is the fact that we're inoculating people that are already being infected with the virus. The vaccine is not very effectiveness in eradicating the virus, and you create super mutations. And this is the problem that we've had. And this is a problem we're going to have for at least the next 1,000 years.
Because I had heard an interview that you did earlier on, and I did some reading. The vaccine itself only lasts about 80 something days in your system. So when we have boosters, you just complicating your system with all this non-desirable that's being put in your body.
Well, the reality is that that's where the American people and the people in the world really didn't understand what they were getting themselves into. You know, me and Fauci were supposed to do an interview to have a talk together, what we call a town hall, but it never happened because the Trump administration didn't want me and him on the same stage. The reality is that this is the phenomenon of what you get when you do a vaccine program in the middle of a pandemic. And at the end of the day, folks, when we look at the actual study from Pfizer, their actual paper that they submitted to the FDA to get approval of the vaccine, they did the program in white people in Germany, 18 years age to 54. Everybody was 100% healthy. And that's the reality. There was no other entities involved in that study. People need to understand when people do research experiments, they look for the most healthiest people in the world to do their vaccine. So, for example, there's two words that people need to understand: vaccine efficacy and vaccine effectiveness. Well, what happens is that they took 100 people in Germany 2 of them got headaches, that's a 98% vaccine efficacy. Well, that's not the reality, because when you take that vaccine and you put it in real life, that number's going to jump down to 13%. And in the paper that Pfizer submitted, it tells you right there the antibodies that you get from the initial vaccine only last 81 days. What does that mean? You're going to have to get a booster shot and a booster shot and a booster shot. And the reality is that is the sad thing about it, that the American public or people in the world didn't understand that. You have to understand, I wrote the platform for the Vatican. What does that mean when you write a vaccine platform for the Vatican? How do you roll out a vaccine to people in the world? One, well, you got to have a good vaccine. Two, if you inject these individuals, you have to be able to measure your results. You measure results by measuring the antibodies. The antibodies produced when you give somebody a vaccine, and we know that we can measure that. Pfizer tells you they have 250 antibodies per injection. Well, you better check it out. And the reality is that 99.9% of the people on the planet did not get a follow-up antibody test. So you don't know what you...
So wait. So time out. So what you're saying is that in 2020, when people were dying by droves in, let's say, the city of New York, and then they started rolling out this vaccine, which is something they should not have done. It just made things worse.
Absolutely. It became part of the phenomena. You never do a vaccine in the middle of a pandemic. And then you have to understand that the Russia had a vaccine out called Sputnik. The Chinese had a vaccine out called Sinopharm. You have India has a vaccine, and these vaccines were maybe getting 15% vaccine effectiveness. They were creating super mutations. That is the reality. And so the vaccines did not have the credibility. If you're going to do a vaccine with an RNA virus and coronavirus, you have to have every possible different combination, and we can't predict that. The vaccine that you guys are getting is off the alpha strain. The alpha strain has nothing to do with the vaccine, so the vaccines does not have the capabilities to cover the Omicron family of mutations. That is a zero-sum game. Your folks need to understand that this vaccine is a messenger RNA vaccine. What does that mean?
Yes, please explain that.
You take one part of the virus, the messenger RNA is the message, which was the spike protein. You make a vaccine, you inject it in an individual, you make antibodies to that spike protein. Your body makes antibodies to neutralize that virus. Well, guess what happens if the virus mutates the spike protein? It's a zero-sum game. You lose because the vaccine's not going to work because the virus is mutated. So we're going from the Delta strain of the coronavirus at 13 mutations up to 100 different mutations to the Omicron family. So the vaccine.
But question. Now, you had said that when you do not use a vaccine or inject a vaccine during a pandemic, do you think that the vaccine is the reason why it mutated so wildly and we went from one strain to the next, to the next, to the next?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. The vaccine drove this pandemic. And you have to understand that the virus wants to live too. It's evolution, called coevolution. They want to live too. So if the virus is having environmental pressures, just like we are, then what happens is that virus is going to do one or two things. It's going to die out, or the virus is going to mutate. And we see the amount of mutations that we have from all over the world. And this virus has figured out how to mutate to navigate through vaccine management. That's why at the end of the day, our natural immunity is going to be the immunity that's going to be our goal. And actually, we know that for a fact that people that get infected, their antibodies last up to 10 months. And in fact, it takes 2 booster shots to get to what your natural immunity does in 10 months. That shows you.
Wow. The odds are stacked against us here. Yeah.
It is.
What is immune escape and how does it relate to COVID-19?
Well, immune escape is that this ability of the virus to evade the immune system. For example, we have HIV, the way it evades the immune system, it lives inside the CD4 cells, the cells that are responsible for augmenting the immune system. It's the same thing with this virus. This virus has the ability to escape our immune systems by mutating. If the virus mutates, then our body cannot recognize it. And that is a beautiful thing about the virus as part of its survival mechanism. That is why if you have a vaccine that only kills 50% of the population inside your body, the other 50% of the virus is going to see it and they're going to mutate. That is a zero-sum game. That is why you do not do a vaccine in the middle of a pandemic, because you create super mutations.
Now, I remember when Omicron started, you were on the PCR at that time, and you had said that a woman that was HIV positive got
Right.
infected. It
Right.
stayed in her for. Can you share that story so that way people know how it evolved or mutated to Omicron?
Well, at one time, the Delta strain was the predominant strain that was causing morbidity and mortality around the world, here in particular in the United States. Well, that Delta strain got into an individual HIV black female in South Africa. The person did not have any antiretroviral medication. The virus was in that person for about 267 days. That virus got to see the complete immune system and it mutated to become the Omicron with 75 mutation. That's why we've always said that when you're doing this particular virus, it's dangerous to do a vaccine program, especially in immunocompromised people, people that are on chemotherapy, people that are taking medication for rheumatoid, people are taking medication for HIV. Your immune system's down. Your body's not going to be able to fight that virus, period. And if you augment that virus into somebody who's compromised, that virus gets to see the immune system and mutate to overcome what we call have immune escape ability to overcome our immune system.
And wasn't that particular strain the one that was easiest to catch because of how she became infected?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the genetic profile of the virus. The virus figured out to be more infectious in your nose, in your throat, to be that much more what we call virulent effectiveness. The virus upgraded its game.
Well, there's so much to learn about this. And I mean, we're not where we were in 2020, but it's still very intimidating because there's so much more to learn. And we are making the effort to make that information available to people. So I hope that our listeners are paying close attention. Okay, there are certain diseases that are re-emerging in the US that were thought to have disappeared. If so, what do you believe is causing this? And I know dengue is one of them, and malaria.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the reality. Diseases have gone anywhere. They're still there. We're just finding out there are more cases, i.e., we have a 900% increase in congenital syphilis in babies in Mississippi and some of the places in the States.
Really?
Congenital 900% increase in syphilis in babies being born, which means that these females that are pregnant are getting infected with their loved ones and passing the syphilis to their babies. So it's starting all over again. We also have resistant syphilis now. We have increase in gonorrhea cases. We have, polio, reemergence of polio because of people not being vaccinated. We have measles cases. We have the monkeypox. We have HIV that's resistant, and now we're finding HIV in 13-year-old kids now and here in the United States. In fact, when we look at HIV, the black male has surpassed the white gay male as the number one person carrying HIV in the United States. Second is black females, that order. So these diseases are here. HIV, monkeypox, respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, measles, diseases are here. And that's why it's so important that people need to understand the limitations, the positives and negatives of treatment on vaccination. Some of these vaccines that we have are very good for measles and mumps and rubella. Get your vaccine program, get your child inoculated. And the reality is that as long as we have the ability to treat certain diseases, people should take advantage of that. And I'm talking about really be effective. If I said one treatment that I would recommend for everybody in the SARS-CoV world, or even in the influenza world, is a vaccine called Prevnar 21 or Pneumovax 23, which prevents you from getting pneumonia. Most people that die from the SARS-CoV virus, influenza, or some of these respiratory diseases is from pneumonia. And this vaccine, which prevents 98% of cases of pneumonia in you, will save your life. And so a lot of people during the COVID situation that I had the opportunity to talk to have gotten the Pneumovax to prevent pneumonia.
Do you see, I mean, to elaborate on that, do you see that a lot of parents over the past 10 years have chosen not to vaccinate their kids because of, vaccine hesitancy? They've chosen not to vaccinate their kids. And that, I mean, putting to the side the COVID-19 vaccine. But have you seen that? And that's probably why we're seeing kids as young as 13 having syphilis and HIV and all of that in their
Oh,
system.
absolutely. Because what's happened is that, because of the age of the internet, you have misinformation, disinformation. Some people put a bad spin on vaccines, trying to relate it to autism and other types of diseases. But the reality is that as a guy that vaccinates children in the jungles of Peru, vaccine as a virologist, vaccines has made our society better. It decreases the amount of polio cases, measles, and mumps. There is a place for vaccines, the right vaccine. And so over the last 10 years, we've had this strong noise, people arguing about if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The bottom line that the vaccines that we do have been very effective in decreasing the amount of disease that we see in individuals. So that's the problem that we've had. And so we have to get back to having this talk like we're having tonight, straight talk.
Straight talk. And while you were sharing that information, another question popped into my mind that I've always wanted to hear an answer on. I should say, get an answer on. Yeah. Autism. A lot of parents do not vaccinate their kids because they think that there's a connection between vaccination and autism. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, there is a relationship. There are certain people that get the vaccine. Kids are going to have autism. It makes perfectly good sense because you're making when you inject an individual child, you're trying to create immunization. You're trying to create antibodies to whatever particular disease you're vaccinated. Well, guess what? Some of these antibodies will go across the blood-brain barrier into the brain and kill certain cells in the brain of an infant. That is a fact. That's what happens and stuff. And so when you start talking about vaccine, what type of vaccine are you talking about? Live attenuated vaccine? Are you talking about a heat attenuated vaccine? The vaccine platform will determine if an individual is going to get autism because most of these vaccines do have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's why a lot of parents are very concerned about. They should be, because the vaccine platforms have changed in the last 10 years. They're not what they were when me and you were kids getting our vaccines, our polio and our measles and mumps. They've changed the formula. And so by changing the formula, now we're starting to see more autism and the possibility of more autism because of the change of the platform of the vaccine.
But just one more question on that, because to me, this is like Russian roulette, because it makes you wonder, why is it that some kids become autistic and some don't? It's like, you know what I mean?
Nobody can ever answer that question. That's just life itself is a luck of the draw. And you
Mhm.
hope to God that you're not going to be one of these folks that you have a kid that gets a vaccine and ends up with autism. But everybody has a different reaction. You might have some people that react, they get a vaccine and they have a severe anaphylactic reaction. You get some people that the vaccines work fine. You get some people that get vaccines, they end up with Guillain-Barré syndrome, Bell's palsy. Nobody knows. Life itself is a chance. That's why it's so important as people are getting vaccines, especially as COVID vaccine, you have to have informed consent, which means you understand the ramifications, positive, negative. When I operate on somebody and I say, okay, I'm going to do surgery on you, you can lose your leg, you can lose your life, you can have a reaction anesthesia. You have to be informed. And I don't think anybody was informed on this COVID vaccine platform at all.
No, people weren't really informed. You're right about that. I think back in the 2020, 2021, excuse me, everyone was scared, including myself. So we saw the vaccine as okay, a way out. But the more you look at it, the more you listen to people like you, in particular you find out again that you cannot vaccinate your way out of this, and you can't keep taking a booster. It makes no sense.
No, well, the booster is going to do one or two things. It's going to make your immune system worse. It depresses it, and two, you can have some bad reactions that we've seen now with females having problems. We have all types of different guys having heart attacks and young folks, cardiac induced heart attacks from the vaccine. And even the NFL football player, Hamlin, that was a consequence of him having the vaccine. And nobody can argue either other way that's just a reality. Because 24-year-old NFL football players just don't have heart attacks. There was some type of enticing agent to that. And this is the reality. So this is a new world we're living in. The most important thing is making sure that the individuals are educated, informed. You need to know what's going on, why it works, how it works, where we're going, and how we get there.
And that was my next question, and you kind of answered it, but I'm still going to ask it anyway. What have you seen to be the long-term effects of COVID-19 and the related vaccine? And you just shared some of it there, where you see young athletes, 24, younger than that, having heart attacks, which is not normal. And we've been seeing that a whole lot over the past year, 2 years. A lot of young people just dropping dead or having complications.
Yeah, I mean, it was just last week a major science article came out talking about increase in cardiac events in younger folks from the COVID period. That's the reality. So this is our new world that we live in, and we have to understand that these vaccines, especially the COVID vaccine, has not been tested for 10 years. We know for a fact that people that get the COVID vaccine, a percentage of people have reactivation of their cancer. People have reactivation of their shingles. People have Guillain-Barré syndrome. They have Bell's palsy syndrome. I can go down numerous of different diseases that people can have long term, even mental fog, increased.
But just a second, Dr. R. You have the effects or the after effects of the vaccine, but you also have the after effects of the COVID-19 itself. Because I've felt a difference in my system since after having COVID. To me, certain things just not the same anymore.
You're not, because this one thing about the COVID virus, coronavirus, that I think was not explained to you folks, is that there are two types of viruses we have. We have a lysogeny type of viruses like herpes, comes every month, or HIV, you can't carry it for 15 years. Then you have viruses, or lytic viruses like the flu or this COVID virus. Lytic viruses, they kill the cells. Lysogeny viruses still stay alive. The reality is that when you get this particular virus, a COVID virus, which has multiple trophism, this virus can affect your eyeballs, your nose, your brain, every cell in your body. So, for example, you get infected in your nose and you can't smell anymore. Well, you lost 50% of your nose cells. You lose your taste, you lost 50% of that. Maybe it affects your heart, you lose 50% of your heart cells, which means you have decreased 50% oxidation. So this is the reality. This virus has multiple trophism, which means that it can affect every cell. So everything's from conjunctivitis to your eyes, to kidney failure, to finding the virus in your sperm or in your testicles or in your ovaries.
Wow. That's some scary shite. We're going to take our last break, and we will return with Dr. Lane Rollin, virologist and microbiologist, infectious disease specialist. He wicked. That's all I can say. We'll be back.
Thank you.
Val Branch Duncan, realtor with North Star First Properties. Her name says it all, where V stands for valuable, A, attentive, L, for loyal. If you are buying or selling properties in the Caribbean and North America, Val can help. She is specialized to assist you in Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Barbados, Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago. Give Val a call at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622. Val Branch Duncan, realtor with North Star First Properties. Please give her a call again at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622.
Been here since day one.
Hey, it's your girl, Coach Lady Q, asking you to join me on the Glow 365 TV every first Tuesday for the Mia Allman Show, hosted by yours truly, followed by the second Tuesday with Holistic Health Show with Coach Dawn. We stroll down to the third Tuesday with On Q Show, hosted by Evangelist Coach Lady Q. Then we close out the month with the Sophie G Show, hosted by Coach Sophie G. Join us as we go live on Facebook and YouTube at Glow 365 TV Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as we talk about the mind, body, and soul. a conversation you don't want to miss.
Orlando, the queen of soca is coming. Culture Fed crew, get ready for Patrice Roberts, Like Yourself. Look where we reach again. End up in a party in the streets again. Saturday, May 27th, 2023. Patrice singing all her hits. I go drink water and mind my business. Patrice Roberts. Oh gosh, you're sweet. That is what I have been balling out. Patrice Roberts. Carry on, baby. Alongside the A-Team Band, Orlando Carnival Weekend. For tickets and more info, call 352-874-3304 or get them online at culturefedweekend.com or eventbrite.com. Make I go love you, Jaja, Jaja, Jaja. Make I go love you, tender, 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 tender.
When you need a professional stager to make your property more appealing for your target buyer, look no further than Zep Bolai Lawrence, realtor and property stager with Fuchsia Realty Group. Give her a call at 321-689-3467 or email her at zepbl9@gmail.com. Zep Bolai Lawrence, realtor and property stager with Fuchsia Realty Group. Give her a call, 321-689-3467.
And we are back on Caribbean Straight Talk with Dr. Lane Rollin, microbiologist and virologist, infectious disease specialist. I almost jacked it up there. I'm sorry, Dr. R. How do you think the CDC and leaders in the Black community have failed us?
Well, the reality is that the CDC failed day one when they produced the wrong testing kit, and that allowed the virus to spread much more rapidly because there wasn't a test system. They produced the wrong test system. Plus, also, the CDC has failed in communicating very clearly what the objective is. They didn't talk about the virus or epidemiology. So they didn't break it down to where Big Mama could understand what the end game was. So they failed in all aspects and lying in disinformation, misinformation themselves. Now, on our Black community, you know, as an individual on the Congressional Black Legislators COVID Healthcare Task Force, as a doctor there, we try to make sure that we get out into the communities in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, around the world, trying to educate African Americans about the effects of COVID. But the reality is that we had a lot of Black folks that were just in it for the dance. They were toting a message, and they did a disinformation and misinformation that hurt Black people because they didn't explain it very well to Black folks. The reality is that when we look at what's happened over the last 3 years, it really kind of peeled back the discrepancy in healthcare, i.e., well, they're so concerned about you getting the vaccine, they're not worried about Big Mama's insulin or Big Mama getting a leg cut off. If you're so interested in a particular race, especially African Americans, bring your A game. You need to provide healthcare to all aspects of healthcare and not just this one. So the propaganda to get Black folks to be able to get this vaccine is evident by the push that they pushed this vaccine. And even Bill Gates' wife said that Black folks should be the first person to get the vaccine. So you were the guinea pig.
We were the guinea pigs. What else is new? I mean, syphilis, we were the guinea pigs. We are always the guinea pigs. And let me ask this question because, you know, it's Black History Month. And also this has a lot to do with Black history, but as far as how our young kids transition into it. So I don't know if you're onto what's going on here in the state of Florida, because DeSantis wants to take African American AP classes out of high schools until the curriculum is changed to fit him. So we see that as you're trying to erase Black culture, you're trying to erase Black history, because when you take stuff like that away from any people, they're doomed to fail. What are your thoughts on what he is trying to do that we're trying really hard not to let him get away from?
Well, the reality is you can't sugarcoat American history. That's the problem. You can't have white people trying to tell Black people a narrative because they don't walk in our shoes and stuff. You cannot tell, a white person cannot tell my grandmother who couldn't read reality. and they couldn't tell my mother about ice cream because she couldn't get ice cream in Louisiana when she was a kid back in the 50s and 40s and stuff. If they got ice cream, they had to go in the back of the house to get ice cream for the little black kids and stuff. So when people start getting into that area of blackness, who's black, whatever, we're never going to get past it if we don't understand American history. You have to understand what happened to Emmett Till. You have to understand the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. You have to understand the Tuskegee Airmen. Every aspect, Caribbean history from slavery and the history of rum and plantations, it has to be talked about. If you try to bury your head in the sand, you're never going to move into the future. And what happens is we find out a lot of white folks always want to try to, turn the page, but they haven't dealt with the past for us to page.
And they try to cover it up, and then you have some token blacks that encourage them to try to cover it up. But this is one thing that will not go away. We will not let it go away. I have one more question before we let you go. How do we as a community go forward from here post COVID-19?
Well, I mean, we're still not post COVID-19. Now the virus is not pandemic anymore, it's endemic, which means the virus is here to stay. I mean, you can catch the virus today, tomorrow, springtime, wintertime, summertime, fall time. It doesn't matter. We're in an endemic coronavirus pandemic now. The reality is that what we have to do is make sure that people still understand that when you get on an airplane, I think it's best to wear a mask. If you're going or you're on the railroad or you're on the subway in New York City and you're touching the rails, you better wash your hands. You better be smart and still use the practical stuff that's always been there that people never thought about. If you're on a bus, airplane, wear a mask. Hey, if you touch something in the public space, i.e. the ATM machine, you better sterilize your hands because you can get infected or even die. So the reality is the basic biosafety security protocols, wash your hands, mask, wearing shoes, not wearing shoes in the house. These little things was going to make a big difference. And we have to make sure that we continue to have educational programs like this. We have to have a talk, straight talk every month. Maybe it's called Health Talk for Blacks in the World. And we need to talk about high blood pressure. We need to talk about diabetes. We need to talk about vaccines so we can educate the folks and give them real-time information from real experts that do this stuff all the time.
I had another question that popped into my mind, and I feel like you're the right person to have this conversation with. I'm a firm believer in the fact that the planet is warming. That also means that the thermafrost is melting. And I feel after doing a lot of reading over the past couple of years that with the frost melting, that will make way for other diseases um, that have been asleep for so many centuries to become a problem all over again. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a fact. I mean, we're finding viruses that are frozen for 10 million years in the permafrost in Antarctica. And some of these viruses are some killer viruses. We know that for a fact. So you're absolutely correct with climate change, which is a reality now. And a lot of folks didn't believe it. It is a reality, from burning the Amazon jungles to increased temperatures around the world, also the melting of the ice polar caps. It's a significant change. So absolutely, we believe as scientists that once 100% that the next super virus is going to come from the permafrost and the ice that's been frozen for 10 million years, just waiting to come to life. And people need to understand that viruses never die. They don't die when they're frozen. They just get put to sleep like a zombie waiting to attach to a live host.
Words of wisdom, a lot of information on the show tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Lane Rollin. I want to encourage our listeners to please visit tapeda.org. That's TP as in Paul, I, D as in David, A as in Apple.org. You can read a whole lot more about what Dr. Lane Rollin does when he's not chatting with us. He also has an FB, every FB, how you say it, man? Coffee with Duck. So if you're not friends with him on Facebook, that's okay because he's also on Instagram. All right. So y'all need to check him out. Okay. And we will encourage him to return to the show whenever he has time so we can have more conversations on COVID-19, more conversations on just educating you and yours on what you should do for your health, with your health, about your health. So Dr. Rollin, thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight on Caribbean Straight Talk.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back again and some more programs and stuff like that. And I'm always available for you folks 24/7, 365 days. I send my love to everybody in the Caribbean, and I can't wait to get me some peas and rice.
Yeah, right. And you know what? Coincidentally, I do this also on the people's chat room. Another question, just another another question came to mind, and then it went zing out of my mind. So I'll probably just hold on to that for the next time we do have a conversation here on the show. And we'll get you some peas and rice soon. Yeah. Oh,
I, I, I got to
this is
give
the
it.
question.
Go for it.
You have so much knowledge, and yet still we cannot see you on a platform the same way they had Fauci. We were so, inundated with Fauci. Even when we didn't want to see Fauci, we were hearing Fauci. You're someone that we need to see more and more often of on the major platforms, because you bring it to us on the real. You speak our talk.
Well, the reality is that I just thank God for every opportunity I do have. I never knew I would have the opportunity to be MSNBC or the Black News Channel and some of the major programs, even your program, the People's Chat Room. It's been an opportunity for me to, anytime I'm able to give information to save somebody's life, I'm doing my job. And so the reality is that if it's calling, God wants me to be there, it'll happen. If not, it's not going to happen. But most important thing is that the people know who I am, and that's important. You folks know who I am, and I'm available for you guys 24/7, 365 days a year, always.
Appreciate you so much, Dr. Rollin. You take care, and we'll see you again on Caribbean Street Talk. Have a blessed one.
Take care, man. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Been here since day one.
Hey, it's your girl, Coach Lady Q, asking you to join me on the Glow 365 TV every first Tuesday for the Mia Almond Show, hosted by yours truly, followed by the second Tuesday with Holistic Health Show with Coach Dawn. We stroll down to the third Tuesday with On Q Show, hosted by Evangelist Coach Lady Q. Then we close out the month with the Sophie G Show, hosted by Coach Sophie G. Join us as we go live on Facebook and YouTube at Glow 365 TV Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as we talk about the mind, body, and soul. A conversation you don't want to miss.
When you need a professional stager to make your property more appealing for your target buyer, look no further than Zep Bolai Lawrence, Realtor and Property Stager with Fuchsia Realty Group. Give her a call at 321-689-3467 or email her at zepbl9@gmail.com. Zep Bolai Lawrence, Realtor and Property Stager with Fuchsia Realty Group. Give her a call, 321-689-3467. iTunes Entertainment Magazine, where the focus is to bring information and entertainment wrapped in a little something extra that is pertinent and relative to all of us, regardless of culture. Our features aim at catering somewhat to the curiosity in all of us, whether it be business, entertainment, health and wellness, immigration, our youth, and more. So please visit our website at www.itunesentertainmentmagazine.com or itunesentmagazine.com. Also inviting you to check us out on IG and Twitter at iTunesEntMag.
Orlando, the queen of soca is coming. Culture Fed crew, get ready for Patrice Roberts, Like Yourself. Saturday, May 27th, 2023, Patrice singing all her hits. I go drink water and mind my business. Patrice Roberts. Oh gosh, you're sweet. That is what I have been balling out. Patrice Roberts. Carry on, baby. Alongside the A-Team Band, Orlando Carnival Weekend. For tickets and more info, call 352-874-3304 or get them online at culturefedweekend.com or eventbrite.com. Make I go love you, Jaja. Make I go love you, tender.
Caribbean Straight Talk, streaming on iTunes Radio, online at itunesradio.com, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. The show is also streamed on islandbeatradio.net, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you on the next episode of Caribbean Straight Talk. Also, inviting you to like and subscribe on YouTube and our Facebook page at Caribbean Straight Talk. This show is executive produced by George Broussard Jr., Lima Dunbar, Mia Allman, and music by Theron Shaw, guitarist, and powered by iTunes Radio and Quillyworks Empowerment Broadcast Network.